boost, and before it wasn't producing the boost that was requested. It was asking for a lot of boost, so the tune was doing the right thing, but it just wasn't delivering it. So they were wondering if that was a fuel delivery problem, hence the bigger injectors, or if it was if there's a leak somewhere. No, it just doesn't feel like it's got the same power at all. Disappointed. It's this tune, or this, maybe it's not the tune. I am disappointed. It's it just doesn't have the same type of acceleration that it did prior to this flash. So we'll have to find out what the issue is. But so I'm in second gear. Down and nothing. Third gear the same. There's just no pull at all. It feels like there's no boost whatsoever. So I don't think it's worth driving this any further. Very underwhelming. Yesterday's problems with the reflash, Motoza Performance sent me an updated file, so I reflashed the ECU and we're trying the car out. We're still warming up at the moment. So yesterday I was getting misfires all over the place, a lot of codes. Flashing check engine light. Flashing check engine light is never good. So we will see today what this does, and it was showing virtually no boost yesterday at all. So this just goes to show that modern, and this car is 20 years old, but modern cars and their computers can be difficult. So just as a recap, we did a baseline flash, so that's the stage 1 flash with the OEM injectors, no other changes, and the car was performing fantastic. I then replaced the injectors with higher flow rate versions and checked the spark plugs, and we did a reflash, and that's when the problem started. We had no boost yesterday at all, which would explain why it felt a lot smoother when I first drove it. It was smoother because it didn't have any of the power. Definitely pulling stronger, and it does seem smoother, but is it smoother because it's not producing as much boost, or just because they've managed to smooth out the power delivery? I don't know. We won't know until I start logging the data, but it definitely feels better than it did yesterday. Yes, it seems to have got some of its mojo back, but not all of it. But this car does go when you get on it. So I was looking at the data yesterday, and on the initial flash, so not doing any hardware upgrades, just putting the stage 1 plus tune in, it was actually producing slightly less boost than what was in the ECU before. Then we did the changes and it was awful. And now today it seems that we're back where we started, which is a good thing. But I will be interested to hear from them what the issue was. I mean, they sent me a file pretty quickly after I sent them. I sent them 2 log files, one of me running on the road producing all the codes, and the other one was just the car idling, and they immediately sent me another file. So I have a feeling they sent me the wrong file. So I've just scanned the car for codes, and I still got a code: power supply terminal 30 voltage too low, which apparently is quite common after you flash a car. I left it on the battery tender overnight, but I still got this error code, and then it tells me all about it. I love this scanner, by the way. Let's erase that code. So that code's gone. Let's continue reading all the other codes, and I'll be back. So I've got a bunch of codes. I've got brakes, I haven't done anything to the brakes. Instrument cluster, haven't touched that. All-wheel drive electronics, haven't touched that. Anti-theft immobilizer, haven't touched that. These are all related to that low power, I would imagine. They're all saying that they're having trouble connecting to the ECU. It's sporadic, and that's just because it's learning its new brain. Let's erase all those codes. Right, that's everything erased. So next thing is to go out again, see how it performs, see if I get the same codes, which I am 99% sure I won't, and then log the data and send it back to our friends at Motoza. My guess is we're pretty much back where we started, but we do have larger injectors in there, so that should mean we're getting more fuel flow, and we should be just about at the limit of what we can do with this stage 1 plus flash, unless we start adding better intercoolers, better intake, better exhaust, all that kind of stuff. That's to come. I had one of these in the early 2000s. I bought it second hand, and I don't remember how many miles it had. I must have bought it in like 2003, and I think it probably had, it was in Quebec, so it probably had 80,000 kilometers on it. Anyway, it was a great car. I chipped that one to increase the performance, and it was amazing, and particularly in the winter. That thing with winter tires on was unbelievable, and I sold it to a dealer in exchange for a Mk1 Audi TT with the 3.2 litre and the DSG, which, it was a great car, but it just wasn't a patch on the original. The design features weren't as good, and it was heavy. It was much better appointed inside, and it was a great uplift on this car, but it just didn't have the soul of this car. So anyway, I sold that car and have wanted to get one for a long time, and this one came up. I wasn't actually looking at the time. This one came up on Cars and Bids. I had already committed to selling my fake Lotus 7. Oh, look at that. Right, we're in 3rd gear, flat out, uphill, and this thing is just pulling like crazy. Anyway, I had committed to selling my Superformance S1. This car came up. I was aggressive with the bidding, and I won it, and I'm so happy with it. I must admit, when I got it, I was very impressed by how strong the engine was. What he didn't realize and what I didn't realize was it already had a stage 1 tune. So I paid for a stage 1 tune. We removed the old tune and put this one in, and it's, I don't know. I don't know if it's better, but we know what's in it. And the great thing about this tune is it's customized for the car, for exactly what's in it, for the upgraded injectors, and it's a live tune which can be updated if I do other modifications to the car. Here are a few of half throttle pulls. It's really, really different there. Half throttle, this thing just takes off. It's unbelievable. This is definitely an improvement over what it had when it came. So well done, Motoza. With the performance improvements to the ECU getting more power and a significant amount of torque, it really transforms this car. If you have one of these and you haven't had it chipped or tuned, you are missing out. Yes, it's a great car as it comes from the factory, but having a tune on the engine just takes it to another level. And that was the great thing about this engine in the 8N chassis. It's got such a tunable engine, and yes, it had some problems, but it's relatively bulletproof. The problems are there was premature wear in the timing belt. The timing belt has been changed on this one, and it'll be due for another belt in probably a year or two. But there was actually a class action lawsuit with Audi about the timing belt, that it was prone to fail prematurely before the service schedule said that it needed changing, and so that was one major thing. The other major thing was the instrument cluster, that the pixels would die on it and you get lines across it or just information that was missing. Tended to happen on the HVAC display as well, but not as commonly. So there was another recall on the instrument cluster, and I remember when I moved from Quebec to Connecticut, I had to have the instrument cluster changed anyway, because the ones in Canada were only in kilometers an hour. They didn't have miles an hour on them. So I wanted to have it in miles an hour. And it was fortunate that it was around about the same time as this recall on the cluster, so it got changed for free. This one, I don't know if it's been changed but it's in great condition. There are no dead pixels, and even if they do go, it's a relatively easy thing to have fixed, and you can actually do an upgrade and have an LCD screen in the middle, which if this fails I will do, but at the moment it's perfect. And having said that, that means that tomorrow I will lose a bunch of pixels. There was one other little thing that the early TTs had, which was a tendency to flip over at high speed, and there were no reported cases of this in North America, but in Europe, and specifically in Germany, at speeds of over 110 miles an hour, the rear end tended to exhibit what's known as aerodynamic lift. The shape of the body actually created negative downforce, and there were a number of high-speed crashes, mostly people on the Autobahn, which prompted Audi to recall the cars. They put a spoiler on the back, they revised the suspension, and they fitted a stability control program. It was one of the earlier cars to have stability control, all because the cars kept crashing. So this one has the spoiler, and it has the ESP, the stability control, and yes, it's good that it's safer. They spoiled the handling a little bit with the suspension, but that's easily corrected. And it's one of the things I'm going to be doing, is put a stiffer sway bar on the back of this car. But it's kind of spoiled the lines by putting this permanent spoiler on the back, and if you take it off, you're going to have the mounting holes in the rear hatch. On the Mark II, they solved that issue by having a spoiler that was integrated into the back and would raise up at speed. So anyway, it's very rare that you'll see a Mark 1 TT without the spoiler, so you really don't know what you're missing or what you've got in extra. So those were the major problems. One thing I have noticed on this car, it seems to be exhibiting a similar issue that my 97 Boxster has, and that is the air conditioning system is chucking little bits of foam out. And if it's the same as on the Boxster, this is foam from the diverter flap buried way down in the HVAC system, and it's the diverter flap that basically says how much of the cold air should come out when the air conditioning's on. This one is blowing cold at the moment. I'm not that worried about it, but I will keep an eye on it, and if it's as difficult to get to on the Boxster, I will not be changing it. This seems to have got its mojo back. I'm happy. This is my happy face again. Good car. Well, the result of that last test drive was a significant increase in peak boost. We were getting around about 19.5 psi of boost, which was about a 15% increase on the tune that the car came with. And so Motoza had a look at that. They have sent me a revised file, which we are flashing at the moment, and that is going to give even more peak boost and then smooth out something or other in the middle. I'll have to look exactly at what they said. They did say the intake temperatures are getting a little high. Well, I live in Arizona and it's 110 degrees, so there's not a lot we can do about that. The file that had a problem, they said it had a versioning problem, which means they sent me the wrong file, in other words, which is why I was having all the trouble with the misfires and the flashing check engine light and so on and so forth. So we will see how this does. The one thing I did notice before as well was we were getting a lot of adjustments at higher RPMs to stop knocking. And that's a function of the gas, the temperature, and everything else here. So I think they're making some adjustments there. So what we should see is more sustained mid-range torque. That was it. They were saying they want to keep it on boost longer to give more mid-range torque. Plus, I think they're going to give more fuel at the upper end to try and address the knocking issue. We will see. I'm expecting the performance to be much the same. Maybe with some slight improvement. That's a pull in second gear, and it certainly pulls very, very well. Yeah, this car is quick. I've actually got the MPG pulled up at the moment on the center display, and when you're really hard on it, and this is going to be even worse because we're going back uphill, when you're hard on it, I'm only getting 6 miles to the gallon. Yeah, this car feels great now. I mean, that pulls really, really well. Over 3,000 RPM all the way up to wherever its red line is now. I think that they've actually increased the where the red line is, but I might be wrong. So there's definitely a performance improvement I'm going to have to do to this car, I think. That's the brakes. I mean, the brakes are good, but with the amount of torque that it's delivering now, it accumulates speed very quickly. So I think it needs a way of losing speed just as quickly. This car feels great. Very good. I'm very happy. That's my happy face again. It's not always the same happy face. Yeah, this car is a lot of fun to drive. I think I may have to take it to the racetrack and see how it does there. Here we are at the racetrack, doing some testing in the Radical today, and I came in the TT, and this is not a track car, but what the hey, we're at the track, so it would be a shame not to drive it on track. So we got to bear in mind that I've just been driving a car with a ton of aero, and I've come to the TT, which is a street car. It's got street tires. It's not going to behave the same way as the Radical does. But I wanted to see how this tune made the car pull out of the corners, and it's really, really good. And it's extremely hot today as well, so I don't want to go nuts. Whoops, and we've got to bear in mind this is essentially a front wheel drive car, and then it'll give me some grip at the back once the front gives up. You can hear it understeer there. Right, so we're out at Apex Motor Club, and they very kindly allowed me to go out on track in this without a helmet, so I can talk to you. So I'm not going flat out here. We've got a very tricky corner here, which is blind off camber over the crest of the hill, and you can hear those tires complaining. So third gear. Oh, let's I forgot about the ESP. Let's switch the ESP off, because it was flashing like crazy there at me. So really the idea is to see how this thing pulls out of the corners. If you were to drive this car on track, first upgrade would be brakes. It's all very well having all this extra power and torque, but if you can't slam as hard on the brakes as I possibly can be there, way wide of the apex, yeah, if you've got all this torque and power, if you can't stop the car, it's not a whole lot of use. So I'm having to adjust my braking points. I mean, you have to bear in mind, I've been driving a car that's half the weight of this with similar power, little less power, but it's much easier to stop it. Yeah, I mean, this isn't a track car. I mean, it's fun to do a few laps like this. But it's, I mean, true to Audi form, it's exhibiting a lot of understeer. Yeah, these brakes definitely aren't up to this, and the more I do it, the more they are just throwing up their arms and saying, no, we can't do this. I'm as hard on the brakes as I can be there. And it goes actually very nicely through the bus stop. Hey, this is the first time in ages I haven't hit one of those cones coming through the exit of the bus stop. Yeah, you just need to point this car in. Once you've got it turned in, it's just flat on the gas to pull it out of the corner. just come off the gas, it straightens it up a little bit. Yeah, the brakes are definitely saying we don't like this. And that's it. That was just a quick outing in TT to see how it would behave on track. And that tune is it's very nice. It really helps it pull out of the corners very, very nicely. So that's that for today, and I think I'm going to go home and jump in the pool. I have no clue what the temperature is, but it's in the low hundreds, which explains why the car is getting upset pretty quickly. So that's that. Until next time, cheers.